History paper 2 is now here, and I got quite a lot of comments about people saying that they felt history paper 1 didn't go too well. Like, if someone's exam didn't go well, it probably was history. And I just want to start by saying that I was in the same boat. Now, for me, if you had have asked me after my GCSEs, which single paper did you think went the worst, I would have said history paper 1, without a doubt. I really thought I messed up that exam. But weirdly, that was the single highest exam paper I did across the entire of exam season for me. I dropped 1 mark in that paper. Now, this isn't trying to show off, but what I'm trying to say is that of all the subjects, history is probably the hardest one to predict how well you think you did. I had students last year who thought they were going to get maybe like a 4 and got a 7. It's really weird. From my experience, history is marked a lot harsher in the mocks and a lot more lenient in the exams. That doesn't mean, you can't fail if you write nothing and if it goes, it just means reassure yourself. The chances are you did better than you think you did, and history is a little bit easier than it seems. It is a hard exam. It's probably the hardest GCSE, but in this video, I'm going to be detailing even more advice that I have to help you get the best grade possible. So if this has been helpful, then please leave a like, please subscribe as well. So the first thing I want to start with then is a slightly odd question. I want you to pause this video after I've said it and comment, if you were tutoring someone, what advice would you give them for this paper? It's a weird little thought experiment that I've been doing recently, asking people that I tutor. Even if you're at 4 now or you're at a 3 now, what advice, if you were tutoring someone in year 10 or who's doing their GCSEs just like you, what advice would you give them? And I reckon chances are you will actually know more than you think about how to do well in the history paper. So doing this will just help you think about what you can be doing to improve history and the type of things that can help you as well. Most students will probably know the type of things they should be doing to get better. And so what I'm going to do in this video is try and teach you some of the grade 9 things to really take your answers to the next level. But I often find that question just kind of useful just in terms of thinking about like how you would teach it. And equally, another thing you could do is talk to your parents, for example, see if you can walk them through the key events in the historical topic that you study. Get a whiteboard out, get something out, make a PowerPoint and just teach them through it. I often find that teaching is the best form of like learning stuff. Ever since I've been a tutor on my YouTube, I've got a lot better at a lot of subjects because I've just had to teach it. So that's something to think about. Anyway, I know that's a bit of a weird piece of advice, but now let's get on to some more conventional advice. History is all about structure. It's almost more about structure than it is about facts. You need to know facts. Yes, that's really important, but you need to know the structure. You cannot be going into that exam not knowing the structure of your questions. The reason I say that is that there are a lot of like easy questions, much more than you might think. So for Edexcel history, for example, paper 2, there's quite a lot of 4 markers which don't even require any historical knowledge. You just need to be able to interpret what 2 historians are saying and then compare them with 2 sources. So you are missing out if you don't 100% know the structure of each question. How many paragraphs do you need for question 2? How many paragraphs do you need for question 4? You need to be able to know the answer to that and the structure to that. Once you 100% know the structure, then obviously you need to learn the facts and all of that stuff. And that is really important. You need to know the topics, but please make sure you understand the structure. If I could give you one piece of advice, it's to do that. Now, obviously, like I said, learning facts is important. Use AI to come up with some of the key facts if you want. Use GCSE pod, whatever it is that helps you try and learn some facts. Now, if you click the link in the description, I've come up with a free resource where you can view my flashcards and use some of them. And I've also put in like a high mark answer as well. So maybe you can read that and see how I did with that. But you can still learn facts. Now, I know this because I've worked with students and they sometimes learn like 20 facts within like 1 or 2 sessions that I've done with them. So make sure you've got some key dates, key periods. And along these lines then as well, it's really important to think about what would be the worst possible question to come up. What topic is your weakest? You must have an answer to that, right? So learn that topic. Spend time learning that topic. That's so important that you focus on your weak areas, on the hard areas, on the areas that you think, yeah, it's not worth revising because I don't think it'll come up. Just try and make sure that you've covered everything and you've got your weaknesses locked in as well. So you've worked on them. Using the specification is really useful as well. To those of you that don't know, this, a GCSE specification is a list of what you need to know. And this is really useful for history. So I'll put an example up there. And then also I'll link some of them in the description, but you can just search your exam board, search history specification and look at your topic and then just think, do I know this? Right? You're only going to be tested on stuff from that specification. So just make sure that you know all of those and you've learned all of them if you can. Now, when you're writing your questions, CATS is something I really recommend. This stands for consequently, as a result, this means that, therefore. You've probably heard me talk about it quite a lot this exam season, but it's really useful. what you want to do is hopefully use each of those words in each of your paragraphs for history. They force you to extend your answer, especially on questions that are asking you to explain. Those are explaining words. You're saying this happened and consequently this happened. As a result, this happened. It just forces you to go a bit further, So, okay, maybe this person died and consequently this law wasn't put in place or he wasn't able to stop this. This meant that this party rose to power. That's Nazi example, which is paper 3 for a lot of people. But the point is, it forces you to extend it. So try and use those words because I'd really recommend them. And when I started doing that, that's when I saw my grades jump all the way to a 9. So one piece of really, really underrated advice that will help you reach the top levels is for the questions where you have to argue a case. It's like, to what extent do you agree? Now, I read this in an examiner's report, which is basically advice from examiners. So Google them if you want to find out more because they're really useful. But it basically said, in these questions, a lot of students get decent marks just saying like, this was important, this was also important. Overall, they're both quite important. But if you want to reach the highest marks on a question that's asking you to think which is more important, then you need to establish a criteria for why something is more important. So, for example, one factor may be more important than another factor because it was the catalyst or it was the root cause. This caused this, therefore this was more important. Or it might be more important because it affected more people or it had a longer term impact. So those are 3 examples of reasons you can give for why one factor is more important than another. And this will take you to that highest level because if you're asked to what extent do you agree, you really want to argue, you want to be persuasive, right? Ultimately, this was a lot more important than this factor because it had much more longer reaching consequences. You're allowed to come to a balanced conclusion, right? But really think about why is one thing more important than another. Rank them and come up with a criteria. And that is a really key underrated piece of grade 9 advice. Of course, then with history, please keep on track of timings, right? Obviously, you should keep on track of timings, but that is important. And then guess as well. When I was looking through random topics that I didn't even study, I was thinking I reckon I could guess quite a lot of marks here and do decently well just by guessing. Some things might just be self-explanatory, so don't leave anything blank. Worst comes to worst, just try and write something, and you just never know. Guess, this caused this because of this or something like that. Often if a question is asking you why something changed, then usually it was public attitudes or something like that, right? So just try and guess, don't leave anything blank. Obviously you want to learn stuff first, that's really important. But if you are stuck, you've got to come up with something. But hopefully you're not going to be stuck because you need to think about the questions that could go wrong that would make you stuck and revise them. Hope that video was helpful then. History really is an okay subject. It feels harder than it is. It's not too bad though, and there's a lot you can do to prepare. So the first and fundamental thing is learning the structure. Then also learn the facts. Make sure you write a lot. Make sure you use good essay technique like using cats, and you've absolutely got this. So please let me know how this exam goes and best of luck.